Perfectory Podcast, episode 189. Lamar, we have a returning guest with us, sir.
You know, I guess lightning strikes twice. We have the legendary Charles Band here, and he is promoting a movie that I don't know what you would call it, like lost in time, but it has become into the ether again. Primevals, sir, how are you today?
Lost in time is right. We're all lost in time, but yes, super happy to be finally talking about this movie, having finished the film. It only took 45 years. You get these stories about, well, I had this script for 35 years and I finally got to make it. This is different. We had the script for 15 years, shot it 30 years ago, and just finished it.
Can you dive deeper into this whole, how this came to be? Because this started David Allen in like the 60s, right?
Right. Well, okay. So I wasn't around. I didn't know David back then. He's a protege of Ray Harryhausen. He's an amazing stop motion animator. His passion project was called the PRIMEVALS. And I met him in 78. I sort of twisted his arm to get him to do stop motion animation shots for Laser Blast, which was my first sci-fi movie made back then. He said, look, your budget's very low. It's beneath my rate, but I followed some of your work and I'd love to work with you. And I'll agree to do your Laser Blast shots, but you must promise to read the script. And he gave me a script and a bunch of storyboards on Laser Blast. Okay. I said, well, what's the basic gist? I said, I hope to make a lot of movies, and what's the budget? He says, well, it's probably a little more than he used to spending. It's $4 or $5 million. We need 12 weeks. It's 2 years of stop motion animation. And I was thinking, well, okay, dude, I'm not your guy right now. But anyway, I said, let me read it. So I read it and loved it. It was like a Ray Harryhausen movie. I mean, start to finish. And so as he was working on Laser Blast, I went back to Dave and I said, I'd love to do this. I don't know how long it will take before I'm able to finance it, but let me at least try. So we began this relationship. And of course, I went back to him many times to do work in other movies, Dolls and the early Puppet Master movies and Subspecies. And, he was doing a lot of stop motion. But every meeting, he pulled that script out again, or the Cinefantastique cover article, go, Charlie, you promised one day PRIMEVALS. And that one day came finally in around 1993. We're doing well for a few golden years. We were distributed by Paramount. And I said, Dave, it's happening. Let's make this movie. So we budgeted out and he had all the very meticulous storyboards all done. Because, for those of you, most of you, I'm sure know, stop motion animation is you're lucky to get a 3-4 second shot in a week or 4 days. I mean, you need the utmost patience. It's one little frame at a time. And Dave was amazing at having 3 or 4 characters all in the same frame, calibrating and making sure they all were doing whatever they were supposed to be doing for the end result of whatever the shot or storyboard required. So that was the plan. We set off to make this movie. And, Dave went off. And my dad, who was alive at the time, was really the line producer and was by Dave's side. Because, Dave grew up in the stop motion effects world. He wasn't well versed in talking to actors. He could talk to a little stop motion guy, for 3 days and pull out 4 seconds. So my dad was very instrumental working with Dave. Yeah, 12 weeks later, when the thing was in the can, meaning every shot was shot. But then we embarked on this 2-year process of doing 250 stop motion animation shots. And about a year and change into that plan, into that program, poor Dave died of cancer. It was like ridiculously bad. At the same time, Full Moon's fortunes turned again, as it does every 3-4 years, for the worse. We ran out of dough. We had to get small again. So we boxed up the whole PRIMEVALS project. And luckily, Chris Endicott, who was Dave Allen's right-arm guy, he got the material, kept a lot of it in his garage. We did the best we could to store it. And we sort of promised each other that one day when Full Moon got back on its feet, we would finish the movie. And that took 25 years. That's all. Just 25 years of waiting around. Anyway, things were getting better. I said, Chris, it's time to finish this movie. And slowly but surely, he assembled a crew and we got it done.
Is it hard these days to convince people? It's like, stop motion, even though we got CGI, how hard of a pitch was that? Like, was it so many of like the original team, or was it like kind of framing the project?
Well, part of the problem being around this long and making all these movies is people that I'd love to work with, again, are dead. That is a problem. They're gone. So, and then in the case of stop motion, that's sort of I don't want to say it's a dead technology, but that's not what people are doing today. It's all CGI. It's a CGI world. So a lot of the stop motion guys, a lot of the effects guys back in the day, they went on to do CGI. As a matter of fact, Dave Allen's studio at the time in the 70s, the people there that worked for him were people like Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett. And I mean, he had this incredible team of guys who then went on to become really successful effects guys in the modern world. Yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult for Chris to go and find the right people. He did. A lot of people did the work to finish the movie just out of love for Dave. I mean, I finished it for the same reason. There's no financial reward. We did spend over $4 million, which is like, by today's standards, 25 full movies. It's a lot. It's a lot of money for a tiny company. And if a small percentage of that comes back, great. But this is about finishing something that you'll never be able to see again. No one's going to take the time, trouble, and years to make, in this modern day of CGI, a project that the minute it gets released officially later this year, hopefully, will be retro. It'll look like a movie that someone dug up from the 60s.
I mean, we watched it. Me and Lamar watched it. I loved it. I love stop motion. There's a certain charm to it that I love. So I'm hoping that I know there's a lot of people that already hit us up that are like excited for this. So
yeah,
maybe it's like a little bit of a renaissance coming.
Well, I think people who are familiar with stop motion or people who grew up watching some of these movies, let's just face it, the bulk of people going to the movies today, they're seeing these huge tentpole movies. We've talked about those in the past, there should be a law. I figured a new thing that I would petition, and I'd go on strike. The law should be no sci-fi fantasy movie over 90 minutes. At 90 minutes, the screen goes dark. You got to get the fuck out of the theater. 2.5, 3 hours of shit blowing up and endless CGI and people swirling around. It's like, oh my God, please spare me. And I go to every movie. I don't care. Even though I hear it sucks, I'm going to see Ant-Man. I'm going to see I'm going to go every single movie. These movies, if you go back to the great movies, starting with stop motion, let's just say King Kong, was 72 minutes. These movies were not long, and the effects were sparing and charming, as you said, charming and fun and magical. Now, you just hope you meet someone who's like human in these movies. If you give me a few characters that I like, not this stupid endless CGI. Anyway, and CGI can be great. It's well done sometimes, but the other thing about stop motion is all those shots, those characters were real. I mean, people weren't working against a green screen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were to some degree with the Yeti, but these are organic characters. They're not a cartoon. And no matter how well it's done today, I just can't help but know that those actors are on the screen and there's like blue shit flying around and they're dressed in suits and they're fighting a big pretend. You know what I'm saying? It's very two-dimensional. It's like a really well done video game more than anything else. So stop motion is charming. It is fun. We'll see what kind of audience there is. But the fact that a lot of people who followed this for literally almost 60 years will get to see it, that's a real kick.
Well, coming from the perspective of seeing Avatar 2, and that was 3 hours long, yes, I can definitely agree, because it's like it looked great, but after a while, it's like blue people aren't as cool after like hour and a half. Like,
something.
like,
I'll tell you what it is. That's why, even though I made a couple 3D movies like 40 years ago, to me, 3D will always be a gimmick that you use to poke things at people. That's what's fun about 3D. And 5-10 years ago, 3D was everywhere. Every big tentpole movie was made in 3D. And much like the blue people, after a while, the brain gets used to, it's like, okay, I'm just watching a movie, but I'm wearing these big fucking heavy glasses and like sweating here and there. And it's like, and then of course the studios caught on and now no one's making 3D movies anymore. I wouldn't mind making a 3D movie again one day, but it'll be just shit poking at you. It'll be like a fun, evil bong in 3D or some shit,
That's up our alley. Yeah, we'd be there. Yeah, the first day. Shoot. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So as long as this thing was like been around, I'm assuming when you went to finish it, it was all on reels of film, like actual film stock. Was there any challenges with that?
There's so many challenges. This movie, there wasn't a day or a week there was a new challenge. So as an example, yes, we shot it beautifully on 35 millimeter because we shot some in Italy and some in Romania. And of course, all the stop motion was done here. somewhere between Italy and Romania, some negative was lost, which is a nightmare. So what do? Well, luckily, the few scenes that had the lost negative, we had a 35 millimeter work print. Now that sounds great. So it's 35, but a work print is what we edited the movie on, because back then it was all film. So that means that those scenes were pretty gnarly, pretty scratched up. I mean, not horrible, but enough where you could never exhibit them because there's a scratch and a mark and a little rip and a thing and dirt and tape for splicing. So what we had to do for those scenes is spend a whole bunch of time and money cleaning them up and restoring them frame by frame so they would look good. Now, of course, I've got a good eye for this. I grew up in this business, so I can tell where those scenes are, but most people will never know. It looks beautiful, but that's 5% of the movie. 95% is just beautiful. There's original negative, and we did the right transfer, and all the shots were done. And there's no CGI in this movie, as you saw it. And I wish more people could see it on the big screen. Maybe we'll do a limited theatrical, would be cool. But it's all organic and it's all on film.
It seems seamless to me. It's like whatever they did after, I was like, it all seemed like it was done one time. It was great.
Yeah, one time over 30 years. Yeah, well, it was done. Look, it would have been so easy to do some of the final stuff in CGI, to replicate. There's all sorts of tricks. And I'm not, CGI is a good tool. I mean, in the old days, it was very hard to get rid of rods. If you had a rod puppet in a scene, CGI, you can erase them. There are things you can do with. I just don't like a whole character built in CGI, because if it's done poorly, it looks stupid, and if it's done really well, it's cool, but it just doesn't have the right. It just still feels a bit like a fabrication. But then again, I'm sure plenty of people can say the same thing about stop motion, that it looks, antiquated and kind of silly and muppety, and I mean, to each their own, I guess.
Everything's getting a sequel. Could you see PRIMEVALS doing more, like maybe a sequel later on and stuff like that, or is it just over with the stop motion? Because that sounds like a process for real.
I don't usually say this, but not a chance in hell.
It's over. Because, it's over.
It really is. When I say it's a lost art form, it is. So there's still a handful of people who can do it, but to do it the way Dave did it in camera, it would require a lot of years and a lot of money, and it's just not in the cards. I'm just happy we got this one done, because this one plays. It's funny. I've seen every foot of this backwards and forwards now. The first time I saw it on a big screen was just a few days ago at Fantasia, and I got emotional. I mean, it's amazing to see how well this thing plays. You guys saw it on a monitor, I'm sure, right? Because you got a secure link, but this was a big screen. There's a few hundred people there. It was like, oh my God, it looks so cool.
Score too, by the way. One of the best scores. So
my brother did an amazing job. His heart and soul was into it. And a few days before we premiered it at Fantasia in Montreal, he was on a big to-do festival in Spain called MOMAS or something, where some huge composers come with a huge symphony orchestra, and they play some of their more famous compositions in front of a big audience. And he got an award. And I guess the main theme for PRIMEVALS was what he played, also Reanimator and a few other works of his, Puppet Master. But I guess the PRIMEVALS opening score or cue got standing ovation. So, it's a beautiful music,
Two things. Number one, when can we see PRIMEVALS on Full Moon Features or anywhere?
I did something with the Subspecies movie that took forever also to make. I mean, nothing like PRIMEVALS, but nonetheless, it was a runner-up, and what we wound up doing is to do something a little different and to get more eyeballs. We did a co-streaming premiere with Screenbox. That's an option, not necessarily Screenbox, but it could be Tubi, it could be Shudder. So there'll be a more substantial streaming release, my guess. And if I had to guess a date, it'll be probably December. This will probably be our Christmas movie. But I'd like to see about playing it in a limited run of theaters as well. I think some people need to get to see this on the big screen. It's so beautiful. So that would be sort of my dream. So it'd be, I would November, early December on some limited number of theaters, and then a streaming release, before Christmas.
And then number two, actually is related to what you said. We love the latest subspecies, so
Yeah,
congratulations, sir.
congrats
We
on that.
love that movie.
Yeah.
I think
Yes, so,
that's our highest rated movie of the year so far. I think
Yes.
5 out of 5.
You mean turds?
Yeah.
don't
You
tell
know,
anybody.
it's funny. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this from everyone, but on occasion, I'm really buried here, and somebody a little outside the immediate circle will call and, hey, how's it going? Oh, great. I'll see you next month. And maybe in New York. And so, what are you doing? Oh, I got this. I got this podcast. Oh, what's the name of the podcast? And then I give them the name of this podcast, and there's always a nice long pause. Like, what did you say? I said, no, they're awesome. It's prestigious, but yes, it is called Perfect Turd.
Yes.
Well, we love that. The new subspecies movie was really great. We're glad you the scale of it. I'm sure it was a lot involved, but it was awesome.
There was a lot of. It's so hard today as an independent doing these movies. You have to do them for reasons that do not have to do with trying to make money. You have to kind of say, okay, you got to make a few shows. What's the expression? One for the Gipper. Just like fucking do it and make people happy about it. And Subspecies is one of those films.
We got to let you go, but fullmoonfeatures.com. Look for Primevals. Go watch Subspecies, everyone. And Charles Band, we thank you once again.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thanks for bringing me back. Yeah, there's a few other surprises coming this year. A show that I just directed, we'll be talking about soon enough. But yeah,
awesome.
It's really shaping up to be an amazing year for Full Moon. So who knew? 2023. Imagine walking into, in this case, Dave Allen's studio in 1978. This is the 70s, I had the whole, 70s guy. You walk in there and you say, David, I'm going to make this movie. And then 15 years later, we shoot it. And 45 years later, it comes out. It'd be like, no, it'd be what? No, it's not 2023. The story is almost as good as the movie.
The lore.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you. Good luck on all your adventures.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Peace.